One of the things I've been warning about as media slowly collapses is that as they lose their viewership, they'll become increasingly desperate, thrashing about trying to stay afloat. The news stories will get crazier and crazier. They will hire more and more activists because it's cheaper, and it's going to get particularly bad. If you thought the smears were bad 2 years ago, 3 years ago, wait till you see what comes next. Because another story, CNN is expecting more layoffs. See, it was only a couple weeks ago that Brian Stelter, the media reporter of CNN, said, no, layoffs aren't coming. Trust me. The spokesperson for CNN shooting those down. It's a buyout. It's a voluntary buyout, meaning if you leave the company, they'll pay you out. Then what happened? About a week ago, layoffs were announced. And now we're hearing it again. More layoffs announced at CNN. We also have this story. Local newspaper giant Gatehouse Media is laying off journalists across the U.S. in cuts their CEO is calling immaterial. As these companies lay more and more people off, they turn to cheaper and cheaper individuals to hire. They turn to people who can generate clickbait and ragebait articles that will make them some money. And the activists emerge. We then see completely nonsensical and insane stories like this from Vox. You're watching Fox News, you just don't know it, where they actually state things like Hillary's email scandal only became news because Fox willed it so, which is an insane conspiracy theory that says one important thing to me. Vox and the other progressive digital media outlets like it are in the minority and the fringe. But from their bubble, they think everything is far right and a right-wing conspiracy. So the only reason anyone would talk about Hillary's emails is because Fox News willed it so. But guess what? Fact check. That's absolutely not true. And this is weird conspiracy nonsense coming from Vox. And there's a good reason why. They're going to start failing just like everybody else, and even they know it. Now, before we go any further, make sure you check out timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There's a monthly donation option, cryptocurrency, a physical address, but of course, just share this video, like, and comment because the engagement really, really helps. But let's go and look at a story I covered a couple weeks ago. Disney put more than $400 million in device media. Now it says that investment is worthless. A now familiar story. Investors say they overvalued a high-flying digital publisher. And wait, Vox is not immune to the same phenomenon. Even they recognize it, saying, we don't yet know the value that Comcast, which put a collective $600 million into Vox Media and BuzzFeed over the past few years, now thinks those two publishers are worth. But it's a reasonable bet that Comcast thinks they are worth less than it thought in 2015. What happens when the highest rated cable channel, Fox News, talks about something? Well, they're probably talking about it for a few reasons, because other people are talking about it. Fox doesn't just make up what's newsworthy, nor does the New York Times or the Associated Press or any outlet. Vox, like any other outlet, is trying to figure out what their audience cares about and cover stories they think will have a positive impact. Sometimes there is a profit motive. A company thinks, hey, if we write some insane conspiracy nonsense about Fox News controlling politics, people on the left will click it. And as Vox becomes desperate for views, that's my opinion of what they're doing, because a simple fact check proves their thesis is 100% false. So why would they publish it then? I think it's for money. But that's what we end up seeing. In this story, they talk about how they say you are watching Fox News because Fox is manipulating all journalism. They actually say in this video that journalists are pressured and scared of appearing as biased against conservatives. So when conservatives say something, they just go and run with it, which is 100% not true. And Covington should be evidence to anybody that's not true. A video of a kid smirking, and it got national attention. That's it. It was a kid smirking. No fact checking, no journalism, and they jumped on board. The other day, a man named, I believe, Ian Bremer, published a fake quote from Donald Trump. It went viral with journalists commenting on it and virtue signaling to the resistance about how anti-Trump they were as well. Was there any journalism or fact-checking? No, there wasn't. But I thought, as Carlos Maza says, journalists are pressured by the conservatives to talk about their talking points. Just sounds completely absurd. And to point out how insane this video is, he actually shows himself in the video. It's in the thumbnail, but I'm trying to find it in the clip, He shows himself bleeding from the eyes and ears talking about this in what may be more fringe insanity conspiracy nonsense. Well, it'll be in the thumbnail, so I'll skip that for now. Here's what they say. We tend to assume that if a story is being covered by major news networks, it's because journalists have decided that the story is important. That's the case. But thanks to Fox News, that's not always true. Fox was specifically created to treat right-wing pseudo-scandals as major news stories, whether it's President Obama saluting a Marine while holding a latte, or Hillary Clinton coughing during a campaign speech. Fox News looks for opportunities to smear Democratic politicians and mobilize its audience to vote Republican. Because, as you all know, CNN didn't just run to the defense of Nancy Pelosi over one fake video. I'm joking, they did. And MSNBC didn't prattle on for 2.5 years about Russiagate conspiracy nonsense, where at one point Rachel Maddow actually entertained the idea that Russia would shut off the electricity to Fargo in the winter. Or that it was possible. Sure, it's possible, but this is crazy conspiracy nonsense from the left waving their arms talking about how Trump may be working for Russia. An op-ed actually posted, I believe it was in New York Mag, arguing that they believed Donald Trump did work for Vladimir Putin. You want to tell me that Fox News is manipulating, the political sphere? I'm going to call you a conspiracy theorist. But let's break this down. In reality, everybody wants to talk about the hot take, the hot button issue. They want to talk about what's going to get them traffic for the most part. Some people are focused on certain issues, more so than others. Some people say, Tim, why do you always talk about things like this? It's what I see and what I think is important, because that's really all it is. They decide what they think is important. I think it's very important that the media has a very hard left bias, and they do, and I'll prove it. I have more sources. And I think it's important when they publish weird conspiracy nonsense that's easily proven false. The same is true for most people. I don't necessarily think all of the people at Vox are willfully lying to you. I think they're just not that smart and are really bad at their jobs. He makes mention of the Clinton email server, and in the story actually insinuates the story didn't matter. It was just that Fox News talked about it. But that's not true. The story was broken by the New York Times and the Associated Press. Why did anyone talk about it? Because two of the most reputable press organizations in the country said, here's breaking news. There was no conservative pressure to do this. That's what happened. So what he's talking about in this video is actually just a regurgitation of an article written by Matthew Iglesias of Vox back in October, which is another example of what happens to desperate and collapsing media. Because they're effectively collapsing, they need content. They need something. So they dig back into their old archives and rehash old ideas that are easily disproven. Let's look at this. He says, Benghazi, the Clinton email server, Rep. Ilhan Omar's mention of 9/11, ended up being taken seriously by mainstream news outlets. Very simply, Twitter outrage resulted in the Ilhan Omar thing, and they even recognize that. So why would they act like Fox News played a role? We can go to the Washington Post and look at this story. They say, since Clinton's private email account was brought to light a year ago in a New York Times report, followed by an Associated Press report revealing the existence of the server, the matter has been a source of non-stop national news. So who am I going to believe? The Washington Post or Vox? Vox is whether or not Vox is succeeding at this point is questionable. Even Vox says they think they're going to be worth less based on the current evaluations of other companies. The Washington Post, back in, what's the date on this article? 2016, talked about how the story was actually brought to light and became a national news story because of the New York Times and the Associated Press. But Vox is pushing fringe, insane nonsense. The video is actually much more unhinged than that. I'm not going to go through everything he says, but he talks about how journalists are gatekeeping. Journalists prevent certain stories from reaching front and center. He then goes on to show a series of Fox News hosts talking about various political issues. The thing is, many of the issues brought up by Vox were simply Twitter outrage stories. In fact, I covered much of these stories before Fox News even did. For instance, Covington. When Covington happened, I had a video out less than 24 hours after the incident debunking the narrative. Fox News didn't get on the story for a couple days later. Fox News is not driving the narrative. What's happening is that, in my opinion, two things. I mentioned they want to make money. All right. So they need clickable content. They need to convince you that Fox News is manipulating you and all of the world around you is a conspiracy run by the Fox News GOP network. When in reality, Vox is just ever dwindling and becoming more and more fringe. So to the people who still exist in this tiny fringe sphere, they think everyone outside of it is part of this grand conspiracy and being manipulated by the political operatives of the GOP. Just not true. As I've showed you with the Washington Post, it was two reputable papers driving the story. And we can even see it in the actual Wikipedia, where they say the New York Times article broke the story. They talk about how the New York Times did it. This was easily searchable. When I saw this story from Vox, I said, here's what I'll do. I'll Google search how the story about Hillary Clinton's email came to be in the public. And it wasn't Fox News. Would Fox News talk about it? Of course. Now, as I mentioned, the video from Vox is a regurgitation of an old article from Matthew Iglesias. They do bring up some interesting points. They talk about how the GOP does get a lot of positive, their polls are impacted by coverage from Fox News. He goes on to say that the issue actually is, without Fox News, what would actually happen is the GOP would change their policies to fit the rest of the mainstream. Quite simply, an interesting point brought up by Vox is that without Fox News, there would only be liberal biased media. And Matthew Iglesias actually brings this up. He does mention in his original article that news media swings to the left. Interestingly, and one thing I should have pointed out, they call it the hack gap, as if conservatives are hacking mainstream culture by commenting on issues that other people talk about. It's absurd. But let's talk about the bias in these media companies and why, listen, how many conservative networks are there? Not very many. There's what, like Fox News, which is the top rated cable news channel, and then there's One America News, which is relatively new and it's much less viewership. But the rest are overwhelmingly Democrat and liberal. And don't take my word for it. I'm going to show you numerous sources. The media bubble is worse than you think. We crunch the data on where journalists work and how fast it's changing. The results should worry you. A story on the fact that most journalists live in blue areas. See the bubbles? We also have this. Objective Papers networks stuffed with Democrat donating employees. It is a fact that in numerous studies we find most employees at major papers and publications donate to Democrats. Now you may think that a site dedicated to exposing and combating liberal media bias is biased themselves. And I'll go ahead and agree with you, so we'll jump over to Ballotopedia, who says, Ballotopedia also reviewed 3 other analyses. The Center for Responsive Politics found that 65% of contributions from those identified as journalists went to Democrats in the 2010 cycle. An analysis by MSNBC found that 87% of the 143 donors who made contributions from 2004 to 2008 gave to Democrats or liberal causes. The Media Research Center found that 94% of donors affiliated with 5 news outlets also contributed to Democrats between 2008 and 2016. If that doesn't prove a little liberal bias, I don't know what else does. So let's talk about the insane conspiracies of Vox. And again, I want to stress, he actually, it's kind of funny. Like, I guess, Carlos is making a joke. He shows himself like pulling blood out of his ear, and the thumbnail is him crying blood. I think they're losing the plot here a little bit. But let's talk about the actual gatekeepers. In his video, he mentions the importance of journalists gatekeeping. He actually does say, let me see if I can find this section. Well, I had it earlier, but you may have seen it. He said journalists are gatekeepers, and it's an important thing they do. Social media companies have become the new gatekeepers for a while now. And we have this story from 2016. Gizmodo. Gizmodo is not a conservative outlet. Former Facebook workers, we routinely suppressed conservative news. How about this from Jack Dorsey? The company was too aggressive in banning some accounts. We know that the media outlets are biased. We know that social media employees are biased. So why is it then that Vox is going to make this weird claim that is easily proven false? Desperation? Again, my 2 points for making this video. Desperation. Complete desperation. They need money. They need clicks. They rehash old stories. But more importantly, they are part of a fringe dwindling bubble that is not mainstream. When you look at the victories across Europe for right-wing nationalism, when you look at Brexit and Donald Trump, it's clear that the left has lost middle America and average Americans and are now part of some strange group that doesn't know what's going on. The best example, the predictions for 2016. How did they not see Trump coming? Very simply, they are not part of the mainstream anymore. They're becoming they're becoming fringe and getting crazier and crazier. We can talk about their policies, which swing so far to the left, doesn't even make sense for moderate Democrats anymore. Why so many people have become conservative or voted for Trump? Because the media doesn't speak to them. These people believe that the ivory towers of New York represent the opinion of middle America, and they don't. But worse still, as they can't capture actual people to watch their content, they become more and more desperate and grasp at straws. And that's where it gets truly, truly crazy. Let's talk about what these companies become and how they truly are gatekeepers and how they truly do have more power to manipulate than Vox would let on. They'll claim Fox News is controlling the narrative. Sure. How about CNN bringing on a VP from Facebook to talk about how they should remove a video of Nancy Pelosi they don't like? Let's think about this. Have you heard the news? It's a video of Nancy Pelosi. It's slowed down to 75%, so she's slurring. It's kind of obvious to many people. I can hear the audio artifacting. You can hear that it's been screwed with. But still, it is slowed down, and many people believe it's a real video. CNN and many other outlets have started lobbying Facebook, saying, we want you to remove this. Well, Facebook isn't going to go that far. They didn't remove it because it doesn't break any rules. This is the internet. People regularly manipulate videos and make satirical videos and memes mocking and insulting politicians. Why is CNN so upset over one video of Nancy Pelosi? Well, you could argue, look, they're just covering what they think is important. I would ask then why they don't think it's important that for years, Super Deluxe made edits of personalities, politicians, including Trump, that were misleading, and nobody cared. Did Facebook take down those videos? Of course not. But they certainly paint politicians in a bad light by stripping context out of what is being said. Why is this one the one they target? Well, CNN is becoming more and more desperate. As I mentioned many times at this point, but as I brought up very early on in the story, CNN laying people off. More layoffs are coming. Well, CNN needs to build an audience. So they're going full on partisan. Look at Jim Acosta. What does Jim Acosta do? He grandstands and he argues with the president. He doesn't do news. CNN is doubling down on going the activist route. And this is absurd. The fact that a major news outlet would complain to a VP at Facebook about a single meme video. Just that's it. Do they not know what the internet is? But I'll tell you what gets really bad. Because the truth is, this is how the swing actually goes. Is Fox News controlling the narrative? No. Is CNN controlling the narrative? Of course not. Is MSNBC? No, they're not. But the tech giants do play a serious role, and they are terrified of bad press, but typically not from conservatives. Look at the activists targeting Tucker Carlson's show and how many advertisers he's lost so far. Has that happened to CNN or MSNBC? Has MSNBC paid the price for 2.5 years of fringe conspiracy nonsense? They have not. But I'll tell you what happens. The lobbying effort works. Because YouTube actually removed this video of Nancy Pelosi. Facebook did go on to de-rank it, but Twitter lets it stand. Why? The video broke no rules. You're allowed to do this. So I ask you, when these outlets, CNN, MSNBC, Slate, BuzzFeed, when they repeatedly reach out to big brands, targeting individuals on the right, getting them deplatformed and fired, who are the real gatekeepers and who really controls speech and the narrative? It's not MSNBC. It's not Fox News. It's activists. It's certain media outlets pressuring big media companies, and those media companies bend to the pressure. So it does happen. Does Fox News allow... Fox News probably gets some wins. Conservatives get some wins sometimes. But YouTube removed a single video. Twitter, fortunately, let it stand. But these are the end results. What Vox published is nonsense. And they're a decently prominent site. They're one of the top ranked sites. Well, I think they're like number 400 Alexa. So they're really, really well trafficked, and they're funded by Comcast. But they're going to tell you that Fox News, one of the only conservative channels, has more power over the political space than it really does. For one, they are losing their power. They still have some power. They can still, control things. But their views aren't really that mainstream anymore. They are becoming the fringe weirdos that no one cares about. So they're going to convince you it's everyone else who's crazy. But you know what? I'll leave it there. Final thoughts to wrap everything up. No, Fox News did not drive these narratives. What Matthew Iglesias is saying is clearly fringe biased nonsense. This guy, Matthew Iglesias, tweeted not that long ago that progressive media convinced people their taxes were being increased. I'm trying to remember the story, so forgive me if I get it wrong. I want to make sure I make that clear. But he said it was good messaging that people wrongly believed they got that their taxes increased. In fact, people did get a tax cut under Trump. But he said it was good. It was good messaging on the part of progressives, meaning they misled you, and that's what they do. And as they become less and less relevant, they need to do whatever they can to get whoever they can to watch. Rachel Maddow's ratings skyrocketed with Russiagate, and they collapsed afterwards. She chased the fringe conspiracy nonsense in desperation, and it's not paying off for her. And it's not going to pay off for Vox, but Vox is doomed anyway. They'll probably be around for a while. We'll see what happens, but I'll leave it there. Thanks for hanging out. Comment below. Let me know what you think about all of this. It is what it is. The media's collapsing, and they're becoming increasingly desperate. More layoffs, and there you go. Comment below. Thanks for hanging out. Stick around. More segments to come on my second channel, youtube.com/TimCastNews, and I will see you all there.